everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to jump into building the STEM teacher pipeline, strategies for recruitment and retention success. We have just a group of incredible panelists joining us today. Something I wanted to mention before we get too deep into it is I would love to direct you to check out the bottom of your Zoom window. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you will see what looks like a little chat bubble. If you click that, you'll pull up the chat box, and in that chat box, you'll be able to submit your questions to us. Before you type anything, please make sure that to section is set to everyone. That makes sure that we don't look like we're talking to ourselves when we answer your questions. So please make sure that that to is set to everyone. It's not just set to panelists. That way we can all kind of share in knowledge and see what everyone's saying. To practice this, I would love to direct you to your chat window and go ahead and let us know, how are you kicking off the summer season? Are you spending time by the pool? Are you hiding out from the sun indoors? Let us know in the chat box. I, for one, know that I was just sharing this. I'm doing a lot of traveling this summer, so that's kind of how my summer is looking so far. But I'd love to hear from you all. Writing test questions. Yep, Janie, totally get you on that. All right. Well, we're about a minute past the hour, and I want to make the most of our time together today. So I'm just going to hop into some quick housekeeping items, and then we'll go ahead and jump into our discussion. A recording of today's webinar will be available to you. It'll be live on our website and our YouTube channel. It typically takes us about 3 to 5 business days to get that edited and uploaded, but as soon as it's ready, you will receive an email with a link to it. In that link, you're also going to receive a resources folder. I'm going to drop that in the chat as soon as I'm done talking. That contains our presentation today, additional resources, lots of things that you can check out at your own leisure. As I said before, we want to answer your questions, so please use that chat box at the bottom of your Zoom window and let us know what your questions are, and we'll go ahead and answer them as soon as we can. And I will pass off the conversation to Olga. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dylan. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building a STEM teacher pipeline, strategies for recruitment and retention success. My name is Olga Vargas, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Bernier Science Education. I'm really excited to host this important conversation with you today. Before we dive in, I'd love to get to know our audience a little bit better. Dylan, could you help us with a quick poll?
Absolutely. So I went ahead and I just launched a poll. We would love to know how long you have been in an administrative role. While you're answering that, please also drop in the chat what you're hoping to get out of today's session, whether you're here to listen and learn, or if you're looking for more concrete strategies you can implement right away. And we'll just keep an eye on the chat. Okay, and somebody in the chat is sharing they want to listen and then decide next steps. They're looking to figure out how to hire science teachers without breaking the budget, filling immediate vacancies, and then I am sharing the poll results as well. Someone else shares not to lose educators to lucrative lab and college positions. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, Dylan. So I'm really honored to moderate today's conversation. I travel a lot to conferences, and and do a lot of focus groups with administrators and teachers. And one of the things that we know, and it is being said for a number of years, particularly after COVID, is that we have a dire STEM teacher shortage in the United States. And it's one of the largest barriers to delivering high quality hands-on science learning. Um, Let me ground our conversation in a few sobering facts, which I know you're very familiar with it. Nearly 50% of new teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years. The most common experience level among teachers today is 1 to 2 years in the classroom. This is a huge shift from the 1980s when it was 14 years in the classroom. And teacher job satisfaction has dropped 15 points since 2009, down to 44%, the lowest in over 2 decades. These trends are compounded by growing inequities. In high-need schools, students are more likely to be taught by early career or uncertified teachers. Meanwhile, the teachers do not look like our students. Over half of our public school students are students of color, but 80% of the teachers are white. There's a mismatch with deep implication for representation and student outcomes. And this isn't just about filling positions. It's about ensuring that students have consistent access to teachers who reflect their identities, love their work, and are set up to stay and grow in the profession. And we know that when students have effective teachers for even 3 years in a row, their performance can jump by as much as 50 percentile points. That's the power of teacher stability and support. So here's today's plan. First, I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panelists. Then we'll dive into panel discussion covering recruitment strategies, retention approaches, and practical solutions you can implement. If you ask questions ahead of time, some of these questions have been included here. If not, during the end, you will have a chance to type your questions and for us to discuss them. Now, let me introduce our distinguished panelists who will be sharing their expertise. First, we have Dr. Josh Stewart, an education researcher and founder of Rocky Mountain Research Strategy. Josh has over a decade of experience leading initiatives at the intersection of policy, workforce development, and learning innovation. His work has supported school districts, foundations, and federal agencies in designing evidence-based strategies specifically around STEM teacher retention and educator pipeline development. Josh holds a PhD in educational psychology and previously served as senior researcher at Mathematica and Marzano Research. Joining Josh is Jess Holman, STEM specialist with the National Science Teaching Association. Jess brings deep expertise in teacher professional development and has extensive experience working with educators on implementing standards-based STEM instruction. Josh and Jess, welcome. Before we start, would each of you like to add anything about your background or what you're excited to discuss today?
Can start. And Olga, thank you for that great introduction. Excited to be here and excited to share some of the experiences that I've had helping develop, evaluate, and improve all kinds of education programs. Previously, I did a lot of work at the federal level related to predicting teacher shortages, thinking about incentives or programs to help retain teachers. And so I'm just excited to share some of what I've learned and get and respond to the questions that y'all have today. So happy to be on deck and looking forward to learning from you all and hearing about your experiences too. Jess?
Thank you so much. And again, yes, Olga, thank you very much for allowing us to be here and hosting this. And I'm really grateful to be here with Josh as well. I've been in the classroom, or I was in the classroom for over 11 years. So I'm really excited to bring my classroom experience. I worked as a special education teacher as well as in a STEM. And so bringing that experience with technology integration and working with diverse groups of students, I've worked with supporting educators and administrators as we're trying to support retention and retaining of of teachers as well. So I'm really glad to be here and be a part of that and share what I've learned, what I've experienced, to help other people in their buildings and support their teachers.
Great. So let's dive now into answering some questions. So the first question I have here is for Josh. Beyond compensation, what approaches have you seen districts use successfully to attract qualified STEM teachers, particularly in high need areas?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I have a number of ideas, and so I'll try to space them across the questions that we have. But I think one of the first ones that I think is an actionable lever that goes a bit beyond compensation has been some of the teacher apprenticeship programs that have been tested in places like South Dakota, Wyoming, Tennessee, Colorado. And they all vary depending upon the criteria and the process for recruiting those teachers. But I think one of the standout components is that having educators that are already in the building that might be working as paraprofessionals but would like to become, say, science teacher, a math teacher, and putting together sort of a apprenticeship program or grow your own program to pull them in and fill that space. It helps kind of navigate the challenge of pulling in somebody who might not be from the community. So you're asking somebody a lot to maybe relocate, but you're sort of leveraging the talent you have on hand. And if you use kind of the Department of Labor structure for that, you can actually not break the bank in terms of providing a stipend for them to take some continued education classes, and then also get compensation for still filling their role as a paraprofessional. I'd say another big piece is continued education. That could be through micro-credentialing. I've seen a number of states leveraging micro-credentialing for computer science or for other STEM areas where they're trying to fill positions, but they have teachers in the building that are interested in those roles, but they don't necessarily have the qualifications, at least right out of the gate. And so having access to micro credentials gives them the chance to kind of showcase their skill and ability and learn that ability to teach that course. We're not having to pull in somebody from completely outside of the system. I have some other ideas too related to strong partnerships with your post-secondary institutions, and I can save those for a couple of the other questions. But I will say too, I think strong leadership, that's going to kind of emerge across a number of the questions. And so given that we saw a lot of great experience that you all bring to the table, and so I would say, recognizing your own brilliance and your own ability to kind of foster efficacy amongst your staff once they're there, but also acknowledging that and kind of showcasing that as a part of your culture when recruiting can be really powerful. And so it shouldn't be understated that you all have a great amount of influence, I think, over why educators decide to stay. And so I would say, really, you know, think positively about how you can affect your school culture because you really are a huge driver of success. And I'll stop here and turn it to Jess. But certainly, folks, let me know in the chat, or Jess, if I forgot anything, let me know. I know we have a number of other ideas too that we're going to talk about as we go. So,
Right. The next question is, what are the main criteria administrators should consider when seeking a STEM candidate? And this is for both of Jess and Josh.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and take that one first. I want to say that like first it starts with like the obvious of like being qualified. I want to first say that. I also want to acknowledge that the reality is sometimes that you're not choosing from a deep pool, that honestly we're choosing from a shallow one. So while content qualifications do matter, one of the most important things administrators can look for is a candidate's willingness to grow. You want someone who's malleable, someone who's open to feedback, they're eager to learn, and they're committed to improving their practice. That growth mindset is often more valuable in the long run than someone who appears polished but isn't receptive to support. I think back to the advice people used to give 10, 15 years ago, something, along the lines of we only want to hire the best. And you'll notice in the community that's really shifted. Now, when you find someone who may be new to the classroom, maybe they're even unsure in their pedagogy, but they really love the work, they love the kids, they keep showing up with the willingness to grow. Those are the people that we're highlighting that you want to hold on to. That's someone who's worth investing in. We're no longer passing along the so-called lemons. We're keeping them and we're making lemonade. But that only really works with if we're with somebody who's ready, or if we are as administrators ready to support them intentionally. So a lot of the STEM educators, something to keep in mind of is that they're coming in as career changers. That they're bringing a lot of content expertise, but they're still learning on that instructional side. And that's okay. We have space for them, but we need to make sure that there's a strategy to develop their talent. And that comes from like what Josh was talking about, providing that mentorship, ongoing professional development, and having clear instructional models and expectations for in the classroom. So when you're hiring, yes, look at qualifications, but don't overlook the soft skills, the relationship building, the resilience, the adaptability. If those are there, then you can teach the rest. I'll pass it over to Josh.
Thanks, Jess.
Just to highlight a little bit, and I think this expands on what Jess was saying, there was a study I was a part of several years ago looking at this exact question: what are the kind of qualifications we should be thinking about? And I do think things have shifted even since then, where the findings from our study happened to be that one of the biggest predictors of student success was their score on the praxis. But that there's a lot of problems that go along with that. There's a lot of sort of bias when you're thinking about the success metrics for that. And this is the raw score. So thinking about like higher scores equal better student performance. And in a way, and it was interesting because I feel like delivering these results to the State Department of Ed that we were working with, they were saying that that's great, but we aren't even getting enough applicants to fill those roles. So it's not as though I have a dearth of candidates to consider. And I think what Jess highlighted is a real important factor, the idea of kind of being interested to be immersed and supportive of the school culture, which is why I kind of think some of these grow your own programs where you're leveraging folks that are already in the building, that already care about the students, that are excited to be there and that want to grow and to develop, I think can be a stronger piece. Because again, if you just look at the data, you could say, well, praxis scores do seem to have that association, but there's a lot of other things that go into that that I think sort of lead to bias with respect to just looking at praxis by itself. And I think the idea of kind of having kind of a growth mindset as a professional, caring about the community and being invested, I think are some of the bigger components to consider, and shifting away from maybe some of the more traditional metrics, because you can come out of a pre or you can come out of a post-secondary education program and look good on paper, but I think those are sometimes the folks that principals are worried about losing because they haven't had enough in-class experience to know if they like it. So
Thank you both. My next question is, how has the landscape of STEM teachers' preparation changed in recent years? And what should administrators be aware of when hiring? And you discussed some of this in the last question, but if there's anything else that you want to add.
yeah, I can start with this one. So one of the pieces that I think has been really interesting to see evolve in the space of teacher prep is around these school districts having a little bit more of a strong relationship with their post-secondary providers. So these spaces where, for example, I mentioned these grow your own programs where the district is sort of helping support the educational trajectory of these non-traditional alt path educators. And so I think that that provides a little bit more, I would say, power from the district to be able to say these are the core competencies or skills we think our teachers need kind of coming into the classroom. And that may differ from what a traditional ed prep program looked like. So I can, again, kind of focus on a couple of states that I know about, like South Dakota, for example, or Wyoming, where the script was flipped a bit in the sense where districts were trying to say here are the things that we really value in terms of our educators, and here are the things we're hoping that we could teach them through post-secondary, and we're hoping to kind of reach an agreement with the course load, what they're taking, and how that applies directly to the classroom. And so another thing too that I think can be really important, the more time that students are spending in real classrooms, and I think that that also kind of ties back to strong post-secondary relationships, getting in there and having a pipeline where those students are spending a good amount of time while they're still completing their program in the classroom, getting feedback from master teachers, can be really important. This kind of goes back again to if we're just looking at praxis scores and things on paper that aren't about in classroom pedagogical classroom management techniques, they may be more likely to leave. So I would say the district kind of trying to lead more, I think is a really powerful indicator of that industry driving and hopefully, kind of collaborating more with a post-secondary piece through some of these grow your own programs.
And I do want to add, when I think about my own experience when I came in as a first year teacher and day one for me, and then I'm thinking about the partnership of, as I'm working with NSTA, the partnerships that we currently have with universities and supporting teacher prep, you can really see that the landscape for STEM teacher prep has really shifted significantly, especially in recent years. And one of the biggest changes that I've noticed is that move towards practice-based preparation. So pre-service teachers, they're not just learning about instructional theory, they're engaging in real instructional design and practice with NGSS aligned strategies, which really just means that they're coming in more prepared to engage students in sense making and not just content delivery, which has been a big shift in science education. And another big shift that I've seen is community and connection. So more programs are offering virtual coaching. There are national cohorts. Teacher candidates are entering their profession already connected to a support system outside of their potential schools that they're going to be hired in. And that's especially important in STEM, where educators are often isolated by subject. So new teachers, when they're coming in, they're expecting mentorship, they're expecting collaboration, and they're looking for access to professional learning that's flexible and ongoing. So for admin, that typically means that when you're hiring, you don't want to just ask about coursework. You want to ask about what practices they've had, if they have experience in facilitating student discourse, do they have experience with using real world data or implementing lessons that connect to phenomena. And also, you want to be ready to honor those expectations, that you know that they're looking for those things, that they want to keep growing. And so when you're talking about what you offer and what we do at your school, that you know, or you can talk about how your school will be a place where they can continue learning, they can collaborate with others, and be around trusted professionals while they're within there. So that way they're more likely to stay and thrive within the building.
Thank you. The next question is about the role of technology in both attracting and retaining effective STEM educators.
I can go ahead and take this. And I really get excited about this question. When I got into the classroom as a teacher, I was drawn to everything tech. And so that was just one of the things as a STEM person that I was just like, technology is such a huge role of what we're doing. And it's so crucial for the students that are going into these places that we also need to be using some of that same tech. So I was really excited when we got this question. And I do want to like highlight that technology is a crucial role in attracting and retaining STEM educators because it serves both as an exciting hook that draws teachers in and also a support system that sustains them. So for early career educators, integrating digital tools, simulations, real world data not only keeps the classroom experience relevant and engaging for students, but it also empowers teachers to bring innovative real world phenomena into their lessons. This ensures ensures the students are prepared for the world that they're entering in rather than learning on outdated technology. And then access to current technology also allows teachers to move beyond traditional textbooks. So they're able to foster a more dynamic and engaging classroom environment. Additionally, that technology supports community building, which is what we talked about earlier, and professional development. So it gives teachers quick access to feedback, collaboration, and resources. There's nothing like being able to get access to be able, when you go and look at your review for the latest Yelp review, that you can do the same for like lessons or books, that you can see immediately, has this been helpful for other people as well? So it really is a resource that enhances transparency and communication for the educator while they're developing their own professionally as well. And then it also serves as a way to support communication between parents. It helps students stay organized and supported with utilizing technology and integrated. Students who are out, we learned with COVID, students who are out of school, they can still be connected to the classroom. Students who need that additional support, who aren't getting it while they're sitting in the classroom, the teacher can be recording their lectures. They can offer additional time through simulations or other ways that students can engage with those during their study hall periods or at home. And it helps parents have an idea of what's happening in the classroom so that way they can also support the teacher and the goals that the teacher has. So ultimately, technology is not just about having the latest tools. And I know that when people hear technology, they're just like, oh, we just want all of the fun tools. But it's really about how we use those tools to create a supportive, engaging, and forward-thinking educational environment for both the teacher and the student.
Thank you, Jess. I love your passion in answering that question. The next question is about how can administrators leverage their position to develop university partnerships? And this is for both of you.
Actually asking some questions about this for a study I'm working on currently. How are you fostering post-secondary partnerships? This includes the pipeline of educators that are going to be coming to teach at that school. One of the most compelling, but I feel like harder answers for that was administrators both at the district and school level saying, I'm just going to my local university, and I'm saying I would love to have your ed prep students in my classrooms during these times, and we want to have a stronger relationship, similar to what you might think of as like a lab school. And so there's been several administrators, both at the district and school level, that have been talking about, it was just a matter of kind of going there and explaining that there was a need. On the other side of the coin, I've heard administrators, or sorry, I should say faculty between folks at universities saying we really want to do more of this, and it seems like those engagements are harder to happen if it's like university folks saying we need more students in the classroom, and there isn't that direct ask coming from a building administrator, from a district administrator. I think the same can be said for other partnerships if you're trying to get your students involved in other industries while they're in school, like robotics and other things. Having community partners can be great. And I would say, at least from my kind of listening tour that I've been doing so far, the sort of boots on the ground going directly to district, or sorry, to post-secondary administrators and saying, I really want to have a more rich learning environment for my educators to come in, learn from my master teachers, actually get time teaching so they know what it's like. So when they get into the classroom, they're not quite so overwhelmed when they're first starting. And so there's no, kind of magic trick to that. It seems to be, sort of a direct discussion, because sometimes I feel like at the university level, there's sometimes hesitance. We've been doing this for so long this way, and it seems to be working. But I think hearing from administrators, hearing from the districts, these are the skills, abilities, and experiences that we want our pre-service teachers to have, can be really powerful. And then in cases too, I know I've talked about teacher apprenticeships or grow your own, but if the district is supporting those positions by supporting the tuition, it gives you a little bit more bargaining power to say, here are the classes that we plan to compensate our teachers for. And these are the ones that we don't, maybe we don't think are as valuable. Here's how we're sort of prioritizing how we're going to spend our Department of Labor apprenticeship dollars. So I think there's a range of ways you can do it, but I think starting that open communication and dialogue can be really important. And you get, I would say, even more power if you're, doing some grow your own programs and providing that continued education for your educators.
Thank you.
I do just want to quickly just add to that as well. I also believe in the, reaching out to university partners. I will say that universities want to connect with classrooms, right? That's part of the course expectations that their students get into the classrooms, and there are not enough people who want to let people into their classrooms. And I know as one of those people who, was approached of volunteering to do that, it can be very intimidating of having a person come in and you're already taking care of a lot of students to invite them in. So as an administrator, it's really important to have those conversations with the teachers of creating a culture of learning that we want to encourage people to come in. And so going outside, I completely agree that you want to strengthen those clinical placements, that you want to ensure that teacher candidates are working with mentors who model best practices, and you want to advocate. I think that administrators have to channel their entrepreneur spirit, right? You want to really know that you have a building full of amazing educators and that students would benefit. College students would benefit from being in your building, from learning from your teachers, that they're going to see that. And then those teachers, one of the schools that I taught at, a lot of the teachers that were employed there were also students who went there. They did their student teaching there, and they were really excited to come back as teachers. And so that's where you get, I think, like another version is Josh is saying, that homegrown thing of that. So, and I know that some districts, they even invite university partners to sit on curriculum reviews. They participate in local professional learning so that both systems are aligned. So while there are teacher candidates who can't be a part of district membership, so here at NSTA, we offer district membership. I would say that like administrators could advocate for universities to introduce candidates to professional organizations like NSTA. I'm not saying it has to be NSTA. Every state has their own science teacher association, but we want to make sure that getting connected is something that we're doing early, and we're advocating for that early. We want to encourage them to join as students and begin to build their professional identity early. And that's one way that we can ensure a community of learning from preparation from the classroom. And so I want to just really say that again, of like looking for university partners who are open to alignment, open to dialogue, and have that desire of shared improvement. And I think that when both sides understand each other's goal, then we build that pipeline collaboratively. The new teachers enter the classroom better prepared, more confident, and more likely to stay.
Thank you. Now we'll move to the second part of the webinar, which is talking about retention of these teachers. Josh, what factors have you found most important in retaining high quality STEM educators?
This is a good one. And so far we've been talking about, I think, kind of the recruitment side of things, pulling them in. And we just did a big landscape scan under the regional educational laboratories on this. And I think two of the biggest kind of predictors for retaining high quality STEM teachers, one was professional development aligned with their interests and goals. So this is particularly important for STEM. And when the PD was not aligned to their kind of goals and priorities, it actually had a negative impact or a negative effect or a negative association. So if it was something that the state was mandating or the district was mandating because it was in a particular status, that seemed to have the opposite effect. So I would say fostering a sense of autonomy and connection to their professional goals can be really important. And then I would say another piece that I know we've talked about is just the importance of the building administrator, the principal team of building a strong environment. And so you can look at, for example, programs, not endorsing anyone over another, but like programs like Balance Leadership that are kind of fostering collective efficacy. I think that highlights the idea that you're elevating the autonomy and the shared concept that we can do this as a team, particularly amongst teams of teachers like STEM teachers is really important. And so you're sort of empowering and highlighting their experience, their skill set, to be experts in their area. And I think that also goes along with training that really meets them where they're at. And again, like I mentioned, if it's the opposite of that, not kind of highlighting efficacy, collective efficacy as a group, kind of imposed PD, that can have the opposite effect. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's important what kind of PD it is, and it's important, how you're encouraging autonomy and efficacy amongst your staff. Oh, I can't hear you, Olga. Sorry.
The next question is, what are the most common reasons STEM teachers leave the profession, and how can administrators address these issues proactively?
I can start us off, Josh, and then if you want to add on to it, I know that we both have like different takes on it as well. In my experience, I think when it comes to, especially when we're talking about STEM teachers leaving the profession, I know that we talk about the surface level challenges, which are like the pay, testing pressure. And what I wanted to focus on a little bit is about burnout and isolation. So many STEM educators that I've worked with, they're pulled in too many directions without consistent approach or support. They're expected to be innovators, tech troubleshooters, curriculum designers, and often they're the only STEM teacher in the building. And that kind of pressure, especially when you're facing that alone, it really wears people down. And I do want to like say all of that, that like this isn't something that we're powerless to fix either. Administrators, they play a critical role in creating conditions where STEM teachers can thrive. And I know Josh and I are going to talk more about that as well. And it can start with what they can already control. So ensuring that teachers have time to plan, they have opportunities to collaborate, they have access to relevant resources. If you want to keep great educators, you can't expect them to build everything from scratch in isolation. And I've seen the difference it makes when districts build intentionally mentoring structures, whether it's pairing new teachers with experienced STEM educators or creating a cohort-based network where teachers can reflect, they troubleshoot, they grow together. It's not just helping with logistics, but it's also with helping supporting their identity and their belonging. And I think another key piece that administrators can do is really emphasize how much they value their educators, and not just with words, but with action. So investing in their continued learning, encouraging conference attendance, or offering leadership opportunities. One of the things that really helped me grow as an educator was the fact that my administrator, they saw my ability or my desire for continued learning, but then they gave me an opportunity to share that and help the culture of our building, where I could come back and bring my learning to my coworkers, and I could host PD where I was leading on what it was that I had learned. And that was a huge motivator and a driver for me as an educator, where I felt like I was learning, but not only learning, but I had a learning that I could share and impact more students in other classrooms as well. So when I saw that growth, and when other teachers see their growth as part of the system, then they're more likely to stay as well.
Thank you. Could you share examples of successful mentorship programs specifically designed for STEM teachers?
I was going to kind of go here to just to kind of supplement Jess's discussion there, which is I think spot on. I would say mentor programs are a great way to help retain teachers, both for the teachers that are providing that mentorship. That seems to be a really beneficial value add for them, recognizing their expertise, but also for the folks that are new. Some things that really make those pop, or that make them successful, is when there's a pairing between skill sets. So, you know, I think to Jess's point about isolation, if the STEM teacher's mentor is somebody who doesn't have that background, doesn't have that experience, that can still be isolating. But there are other ways to do it beyond simply having somebody in the building. I still think it's important to have that mentor-mentee relationship, and we've seen it play out with other programs where induction is successful versus when it's not. But there's also virtual networks too, where You can connect STEM educators to other STEM educators if we're talking about like rural district where somebody's doing all of the stuff, right? They're teaching multiple classes related to STEM and there isn't a colleague. Having a virtual network that can help support them can also be really beneficial. I know we did. I think I had a note here about like student loan forgiveness. I know sometimes that's a bit of a touchy subject if you have funds for that, but that can also be a big driver for somebody staying in a location. Just mentioned, kind of appreciation for staff, and I think that showcases appreciation. It's still sort of related to compensation. We wanted to focus on things that were a bit more malleable, but at the same time, that can be beneficial as well. So I'd say, mentorship, I think, can go a long way for both the person providing it and the person getting it. But again, if there's a disconnect between the skill sets, if the mentors are overloaded, that can be a big problem too. So making sure that there's time in the day for that. If there's a PLC amongst the STEM teachers, there's allocated time to do that. Because, if it's available, but there's no time to do it, obviously, that's a challenge. Um, yeah, but I think that covers some major points there that I wanted to touch on. Jess, what else do you have anything to add?
I wanted to just share one of the things in my experience for NSTA. I currently am leading a national STEM cohort, and this we bring teachers together and administrators from across the country with shared goals like strengthening NGSS practices, increasing equity in STEM, and we really prioritize not just connecting people, but really creating a rhythm of reflection, collaboration, and feedback. And what really makes the program work is in the design. It's very intentional. The participants are engaged in virtual sessions. They have discussion forums. They have structured feedback cycles where we analyze and adapt instructional materials. We have mentors that are alumni of previous programs. And so sometimes they're just a step ahead or they've experienced that as well. And what's really powerful that we see is that it just doesn't stop at the program level. We see and we support those same mentees or those within the cohort. They go on to lead their own PD within their own district. They're encouraged to mentor new colleagues, and it shifts the culture of support within their schools. So I think that shifting when we talk about mentoring, that it's more than just content guidance. And I think Josh and I are both saying that it's really about building community. And these kinds of programs, they provide that, and they're a model for what sustainable embedded support could look like.
Thank you.
One
Um,
quick thing. Oh, sorry. Go for it, Olga.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this builds off what Jess is saying. If it's an overly structured mentorship where there's only formal chances to connect, that seems less effective than these informal, regular check-ins because really you want that person in your back pocket when you have challenges. And so if there's the more access, the better. And I think that gets more at the heart of availability, making space for it. Because in spaces where it was too rigid or the person felt like there wasn't enough time to really check in regularly, that was not as valuable as informal time to just decompress, talk about what's challenging, on a regular basis, as opposed to trying to build everything up and just do one session once a month. So the more you can do it organically, the better I think it'll be.
Thanks, Josh. So, tell me about retention strategies for small STEM departments or small schools like in rural places. What strategies do you have for the smaller schools?
I can get started. So I think retention looks different when you're working in a small school or with a small STEM team, especially when we're talking about budgets being really tight. So you may not be able to offer big bonuses or stipends, but what you can do is show your teachers that they're valued and supported in practical and consistent ways. So you could start by investing in them intentionally, even if we're talking about on a small scale. And that could mean that you're buying them the latest books on science pedagogy, you're giving them time to test a new class classroom tool, or you're covering the cost of a virtual conference. Small gestures would go a long way when teachers see that you're paying attention to their needs and you're making space for their growth. It's also important to be mindful of their workload, especially when it comes to the number of preps. STEM teachers often wear multiple hats. They teach different grade levels, labs, electives, and that's where burnout starts. So if you can't reduce the load directly, supporting them and managing it would be a place to shift. So help them think through how to advocate for a more balanced schedule. Have them have a seat at the table during scheduling. So that way they know, and everyone in the scheduling team can talk about where we're going in the big picture for the school. And sometimes it's just about giving them permission and even a strategy ahead of time of how they can speak up before they're deep underwater or they're overwhelmed with what's happening. And because small schools often lack a full department, teachers can feel isolated, like we talked about before. So, really making sure that you intentionally know that they are connected, whether that's through a regional network, a virtual PLC, or even standing time where they plan with another colleague in a cross discipline that serves, and maybe the math teacher is some planning a thought partner that they're with, that you as the administrator know that this is a system that's happening, that they are connected. That sense of community and collaboration can be a game changer for retention. So even in a small setting, retention is possible when teachers feel like their needs are seen, their time is respected, and their growth is being nurtured.
And to jump off of where Jess was going with that, I think that really speaks to the power of the administrator and creating a space for educators to feel successful. And so a couple of other takeaways, but I think that that's huge and possibly the biggest, kind of takeaway. Some other things to maybe consider. I know that in some of the states that I've worked with that are very rural, um, getting folks in who are, again, kind of like paraprofessionals who already live in the community and understand the community needs, that can be an easier lift if we're doing that process through maybe some continued education and you're sponsoring them through a remote university, or perhaps you're providing some micro credentialing experience for them so they can get and become a fully certified teacher. And so I would say, I think Jess's point was more important than this piece, but offering folks who are already there pipeline to fill those roles can be very beneficial, because if you're in a rural district, folks might feel isolated, but they have that community already if they're a paraprofessional, or if they're a teacher who would like to teach a STEM class but can't. So some of these continued education pieces can be really helpful at keeping them on board, even when budgets are tight.
Thank you. Now let's talk a little bit about professional development and educational practices. So, Jess, how can administrators support teachers who are transitioning to the NGSS or state-aligned teaching practices?
Thank you. So when teachers are transitioning to NGSS, it's a major shift, not just in what they teach, but in how they think about instruction. It's no longer about covering the content, it's about facilitating sense making. And that kind of shift is hard if school leaders aren't in it with them. So that's why when we talk about how administrators can support, we really highlight administrator understanding. Teachers can feel when their administrator is just checking a box versus when they truly understand what NGSS instruction should look like. When leaders understand the three-dimensional shift, they can actually support implementation in a way that's meaningful, not just evaluative. From there, I would say the next thing is to think about is setting realistic goals together. NGSS isn't a light switch, it's a journey. So when teachers and administrators co-create milestones, it shifts the pressure to become a shared progress and not individual failure. And one of the biggest barriers that we talked about, I think that is still here, is that isolation. It's really hard to know if you're on the right path if you don't have someone to check in with, someone who is reputable, someone that you trust trust, someone that you know also deeply understands it. So no teacher should be trying to do the work alone. You want to make sure that all of your educators have a thought partner or a mentor, someone that they can process with, reflect with, troubleshoot. I know when I was doing the shift for NGSS, I had several teachers that I would go to, and we were doing the same units. So we could reflect at the end of the class, how did the class go? What were the roadblocks that we experienced? What were the aha moments that students shared? So we could reflect on what changes we needed to make and also stretches our understanding of what it meant to do that sense making, what it meant for the NGSS, of how things were meant to be taught in this way. I also want to encourage administrators to engage in professional learning themselves. So and I try to like, I know I started with this and I want to like really reiterate it again, that when you go through NGSS, the line PD, and you experience it, what it's like to make sense of a phenomena, what does it feel like when students are trying to solve a problem, then you position yourself to be better equipped to give actionable instructional feedback. And that sends a powerful learning message to the teacher that we're learning this as well. Supporting this transition isn't just about buying new material or attending a workshop. It's really about building a system where teachers feel seen, supported, and set up to succeed.
Thank you, Jess. How can administrators better support STEM teachers in implementing real-world learning experiences?
I can start. Josh, do you want to add on after I get? Okay, cool. So when we talk about real world authentic STEM learning, it really starts with clarity. So what does that look like in practice? When students are engaged in authentic learning, they're not just completing assignments, they're investigating local issues, they're solving meaningful problems, they're drawing connections between science and the world around them. And when we talk about that, that shift is really exciting, but it really does take real support. So administrators can help by ensuring teachers have time and space to plan intentionally. If we want authentic learning, we can't treat it like an add-on. It has to be embedded into the culture of instruction. That might mean adjusting schedules to allow for collaboration, for co-planning time, for time to analyze data and make changes of reflection, and even bringing in community or industry partners to help design relevant tasks. One thing that I've seen work really well is when administrators actively help teachers identify local problems or contexts. So, thinking in terms of food systems or climate resilience or technology use. So, we're talking about thinking about the local community that students are living in, and then they can tie those things back to the standards. So, that relevance is where engagement lives. And finally, or another point would be that administrators need tools to recognize and support the work. So if a teacher is trying something innovative, but the observation rubric is still focused on lecture or pacing, then you're going to miss the mark. So you want to make sure that what you're using to evaluate, what you're using in order to provide support, also aligns to that real world three-dimensional NGSS shift as well. Supporting real world STEM learning means aligning your tools, your expectations, your feedback, so that the way that the teacher feels encouraged, not penalized, but you also feel very confident in the feedback that you're giving and the analysis and the evaluation that you're providing while the teachers are maybe doing things differently in this new way.
Illustrative example, like I mentioned, I've been doing some interviews with district and building leaders on innovative strategies to, cooperate or collaborate more with STEM industries, getting students actually doing internships with robotics and all kinds of other things. One piece that really stood out to me was, as opposed to sort of going it alone. I think this is probably helpful for administrators too, but sort of having kind of a collective strategy and everybody at the building level sort of bought into we're going to do. And I realize like project-based learning is relatively vague, right? There's all kinds of different ways to do it. The building leaders that I was talking to that were doing this were partnering with local engineering, hospital, all kinds of other industries, but they were bringing in their STEM teachers, but sort of deciding as a team, like, this is what we're going to do, here's how it's going to look. And when folks were worried, like, well, what if it's not on the standardized test? What if it's not on the evaluation rubric, like Jess said? The administrator was saying, I don't care about that. Now, I know that there's a lot that goes into that, but it was creating a safe space to try these sort of miniature experiments about what are we going to do in this particular science classroom, in this math classroom. How are we going to embed it with an experience in the community with a partner? And so I would say, again, another huge asset that teachers have is their building leader to give them permission to do that, but also be a part of the conversation, a part of the discussion, and a part of the team that's deciding as a group, this is how we're going to move forward. I think when it's been, and I'm sure everybody can relate, when it's been less effective, relate from kind of experiences you might have heard from colleagues. If it seems overly top down and the teachers don't really understand why am I doing this, how am I doing this, what's the end goal, and could I get in trouble because I'm not kind of ticking all the boxes on the rubric or something happens with the state test, that's when things seem to kind of become problematic. And so again, I would encourage you to leverage your brilliance as administrators, as mentors, to create the space where you're kind of agreeing on what it is you're doing to move forward and giving your educators kind of a seat at the table to have those discussions, which I'm sure a lot of you are doing that exact thing, but I think it just sort of amplifies from an experiential level exactly what Jess was saying.
Thank you. And we have one more question before we take some questions from the audience. The last question is how to manage content distribution in small schools where one teacher teaches all the sciences.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is not an isolated scenario, right? Like this is something that a lot of people feel. And it could be one teacher, it could be maybe you only have two teachers and they're teaching everything for that whole high school. And so I think like what is probably the most impactful would be master schedule management. And I kind of like hit on this earlier, but like sit down with that one person or the two people, sit down with the counselor, and you want to make sure that that teacher knows that they have a voice. And you don't want to think about just that 1 year, right? If you're saying, look at the cohort of students that you have, we have to teach biology, we have to get to chemistry, maybe your teacher wants to do AP. So you want to think about where it is that you want to go for the school, and think about the guidelines that you have and the goal of what else you want to offer. And you want to make sure that that educator has a seat at the table so they can help you plan accordingly. And then during the year, when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're taking care of them, that they have some release time, that they can plan for the next semester. Like what Josh was saying, pooling those para pros, having them go in and sit in the classroom so that way that teacher has an opportunity to step away and do some grading, do some planning. You want to make sure that they're being taken care of. And as we talked about getting them connected, plugging them into state or national science organizations so that way they feel that connectivity. They know that they have other peers, that they're not an island by themselves. And we know that budget is an issue. And so looking at where you can be creative, where you can pull funds from other places so that way you can support them with those endeavors is all of it is a priority. I think to what Josh was saying, what's really important is that you're communicating with the educator and they know that the problems that they're facing, you were in the boat with them and that you're working with them to solve those problems and they're not going ignored or quiet, that they know that their voice is important and that you hear it and you are making it a priority in the building dynamics.
Thank you very much. Now let's do one or two questions from the audience. I know the time is tight. If we don't get to all of the questions, we will try to answer them individually with you. So Dylan, are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so far we've got one. What kind of professional learning programs best support hands-on STEM instruction, and how can I find them?
Okay, yeah. Um, so when we talk about hands-on STEM teaching, it's really complex and it requires more than access to materials. It takes confidence, clarity, and framework that support that real world exploration. So the best professional learning programs that I've seen are the ones that don't just talk about these shifts, but they model them. So they ensure that teachers are immersed in the student experience. Teachers are engaged in the science and engineering practices. They're analyzing data. They're building models. They're engaging in scientific argument. They begin to understand the pedagogy behind it. And that's what the three-dimensional learning is really all about. So when you have these programs, they create space for reflection and iteration. Teachers can test out new ideas. They can learn from missteps, talk about student misconceptions that they might have when they're engaged in those same lessons. And that helps them refine their practice in a safe and collaborative environment. So in our work here or at NSTA, we often use high quality instructional material as the backbone. So teachers study a lesson, they analyze how it supports sense making, and then they adapt that for their classroom. So they aren't just learning theory, but they're also building the muscle for doing those things. Another key is integrating career connection engineering practices. So you're looking for programs that have those connections, and teachers are then able to see how a lesson connects to a real world challenge or career pathway. It helps them design learning experiences that are not just engaging but deeply relevant. These are the programs that treat teachers like professionals capable of solving instructional problems with creativity, strategy, and impact. And we talk about like finding them, going to places like the NSTA website, but we share out tons of other resources. Even just Googling high quality instructional material, looking at the badges that for the Achieve badge, these are being reviewed by Equip using the Equip rubric to say that these are meeting the expectation for being NGSS aligned, three-dimensional, students engaged in sense making. And then utilizing tools and resources to then adapt those to fit your local context. But you do want to make sure that you as the administrator are also getting the experience of what does it feel like as a student to engage in this lesson. That'll help you provide feedback, actionable feedback to the educator to help them get to make sure that they're hitting that mark as well.
Thank you both, Josh and Jess, for sharing such practical research-based insights. And also, before we wrap up, do either of you have one key takeaway you want the administrators to remember as they head back to their districts?
Can say from the sort of high level research synthesis space, there are a few things that are more powerful than your experience, your leadership at the school level. And so I would just say recognize your, again, I keep saying recognize your brilliance and your ability to open the door for innovation and collaboration with your teachers. And so perhaps this sounds, I don't know, not cheeky, but believe in yourself, right? And the data shows that strong building leadership is associated with teacher retention. And so we know if they love you, they want to stay. So recognize your brilliance and your impact on the school culture. Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Jess?
I definitely agree with everything that Josh is saying. And then I would add of lean into the growth mindset, right? The idea that you haven't arrived, that there's still so much to learn. It's really comforting as educators to also hear that my leader doesn't feel like they know it all, that they're also learning and growing, and that's something that we can partner and do together. And so, as a leader, showing that leaders are constantly growing and taking in new information and have that love for learning, that helps really set it up for your educators who may be feeling vulnerable, who may be feeling embarrassed that they don't know and they're not staying up on trends, to take chances and to take risks and to lean into that. And the same with your students, right? It lets them know that you, the leader, the person in charge, you're still growing and learning. That as people, we don't just wake up and then bam, we got it. That we continue to learn and grow, and having that love for learning keeps us moving day to day.
Thank you, Jess. So for our attendees, thank you very much for your participation. We will be following up with a recording of today's session and some additional resources that Jess and Josh have given us. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a follow-up questions, just reach out to Dylan or to me. And thank you again for taking the time to focus on this issue. The work you're doing to build strong STEM teacher pipelines directly impact student learning and our future workforce. We are very grateful to partner with you. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. And Jess, did you have a few slides you wanted to take us through really quickly?
Oh, sure. If we still have time. Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know about a couple opportunities at NSTA. We have a couple web seminars that are coming up that we would invite you to join us. We have some for the science update and then a couple learn and lead ones that we'd love for you to join us with. And then if you want to go to the next slide. In the fall, in September, a really great web seminar, and I say it's great, I'll be there, of making sense of meaningful STEM. This is a topic study for K-12 STEM educators. So you can come as the administrator, come as send your educators as well. We're going to be diving into a ton of STEM lessons, getting the student hat, knowing what it feels like when you're engaged in authentic STEM learning. And then I don't know if you have heard, hopefully you have, but come and meet us at the Minneapolis conference in November. That's our next national conference. And currently we have the super early bird sale, which is on sale until the end of July. It's the lowest rate ever. And so if you are like, oh man, I'd love to send a couple teachers, this is the rate you want to lock in at to go ahead and send some of them. So the conference is in Minneapolis for the fall, and I believe it's in Anaheim.
I think it's
That's a real
in
place.
Los Angeles area, right?
All right, all right. Is Anaheim in the Los Angeles area?
That's
Okay, cool.
great. to me.
So, I know we'll be in the LA area for the spring. So, please come and join us there too. We'd love to see you. We'd love to have you. It's really every teacher that has ever gone to a conference has always come back with like, I can't believe it. It was so amazing. I can't wait to go back.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and close the webinar. Thank you all again for joining us. Thank you to our incredible host and our two fantastic panelists. It's been an amazing conversation. So have a great rest of your Wednesday, everyone.
Bye-bye.